Thanks so much, everyone, for watching. We've got an epic lineup tonight of speakers. We've got an awesome panel here. Amazing group of functional doctors, technology, activists, for a leap forward in medicine.
You know, our goal is to make it easy for practitioners to learn in community.
This ecosystem that is being set up by the meetup groups, we believe will be the future ecosystem of this evolved primary care network, and it all revolves around you.
Welcome to the Functional Forum. Thanks for joining us in the charge to accelerate the evolution of medicine. Please welcome your host, James Maskell.
Hello and welcome to the Functional Forum. This month we have come to Texas Hill Country to the annual conference of the American Academy of Environmental Medicine. This organization dates all the way back to the 1960s, and yet we've never done a functional forum from their conference. They are full of new energy. It's an exciting time to be here. It's an exciting time for environmental medicine. We are going to bring you all the best bits from the conference. We're going to speak to some of the organizers, the board, and really look at how this organization in the next 10 years can bring environmental medicine to the forefront. It's going to be a great show. Enjoy. So this is the first time that we've ever come to the American Academy of Environmental Medicine, and it dates back to the 1960s. But I had a chance to come to just an hour of the conference the last time and felt a level of inclusion and connection and inspiration that I think have been sorely missing from the last few years. And so I want to give you a little taste of what we saw here, and for you at home to see if this is a community that you'd like to be part of. It's going to be a great hour. Enjoy. All right, I'm here with my friend, Dr. Jeffrey Morrison, president of the American Academy of Environmental Medicine. Doc, how does it feel to be here doing it?
Well, this is like a rock concert. We are having the best time learning about all the toxins in the environment, but really so much about what to do about it. And we're also really leading the American Make America Healthy Again movement with the great words of inspiration that Dell Bigtree gave us last night. And even more to come tonight with our keynote speaker, Erin Brockovich. AAEM is a community and we're a movement, and we're having a great time together.
Give us a little bit of the vision of what you think this organization can be.
Well, already we know that environmental toxins are causing so many health problems in the United States and the world. It's more than just expecting our government to create solutions for us. We've got to do it as physicians to teach our patients what is in their environment, how they can remove themselves from those problems, and then how to heal themselves. But also, we really feel it's great to partner with our like-minded organizations. Organizations like the Metabolic Terrain Institute for Health, which is recognizing how environmental toxins affect cancer. Also, our British Society of Environmental Medicine, which is our across the pond sister brother organization, and also the Alliance for Natural Health, which is an advocacy group which is lobbying in New York, in the Washington D.C., and has been instrumental for the MAHA movement. So we feel like we are in a prime position to continue to grow this, and that's what we're excited about. And we're excited you're part of the growth and the movement as well.
Well, we're really grateful to be here. Over the next hour, we're going to take you some of the best speakers, some of the practitioners that are here, enjoying the conversation. Thanks for taking this forward, and grateful to be here.
Thanks, James.
All right, we're here at AAEM with Dr. Yvonne Carney. Doc, why did you choose to come to AAEM?
This is a great group of people and really want to change the world, help people get healthier, recognizing how significant the environmental toxic burden is to our overall health. It's really people who have the motivation that matches mine with wanting to just make the world a better place.
If you were to speak next year, what would you speak on? What's your contribution to environmental medicine?
Well, it's funny you should ask because I am going to apply to speak next year. We had 2 great lectures this morning. One of them was about how the pesticides are hormone mimickers. And the other today was about how testosterone deficiency is such a big problem. And the only thing missing from those 2 lectures was the contribution that the cell membrane is where the hormone receptors lie. And I think that those hormone mimickers and the testosterone deficiency is because these environmental toxins damage the cell membrane so much that it can't respond to the hormones anymore, or it goes way wacko and responds with too much estrogen. And so, yes, it's a big problem, but looking at the mechanism and how we fix it, I think I have a contribution there with the membrane medicine.
And what is some of your favorite tools for restoring the health of the membrane?
Healthy fat.
Okay.
The cell membrane is made out of fat. Your brain is 60% fat. And we have this phobia of fat and thinking that fat is bad, but it's not fat that's bad, it's unhealthy fat that's bad. And we need to get rid of, I call it melted plastic.
Yeah.
If you have melted plastic on your cell membranes, they can't do anything. And that's what happens to the fats when they get oxidized by inflammation. They turn into melted plastic.
Yeah.
And so we have to get the melted plastic off the membrane and then rebuild healthy cells. And then our mitochondria work, our brain work, our hormones work. And that's the key to health.
Very thoughtful physicians here at AAEM. Thanks, Doc.
Thank you.
Great to be here with you. So first, let's check in with Dr. Kelly McCann. She's a board member and one of the most respected doctors in environmental medicine. Let's check in with her to see what's new. All right, as you know, on the Functional Forum, we have a range of topics. Sometimes we look to inspire, we talk about practice management, and we do the latest clinical breakthroughs. And the last time Dr. Kelly McCann was on, we had one of the nerdiest forums of all time talking about mast cell activation. You did an amazing job there with Eric Lundquist, and really brought an incredible amount of detail into what it takes to work with some of those cases. Tell us what you're talking about at this conference and how it sort of follows on from that.
So today I'm talking about mast cell activation, hypercoagulability, and biofilms. And the idea is that most patients who walk in my clinic these days are so complicated, and they all have mast cell activation, they all have mold, they all have chronic infections. But some of the things that are not being talked about is this hypercoagulability piece, as well as the biofilms. And so I wanted to highlight these 2 topics because of that reason, that practitioners don't really know enough about it. So what do I mean by hypercoagulability? Technically, it's better to be talking about it as a prothrombotic state, meaning we're making more clots and we're not breaking down clots enough. And this is important because that's how all of the nutrients get to all of our tissues, right? If we cannot if the blood is sticky and clotting, it's not, the nutrients and the oxygen are not getting to where they need to go. And what happens when our body is like that, not only are we at risk for things like heart attacks and strokes, but it can cause a whole host of issues too. Chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, exercise intolerance. So there's a whole lot of symptoms that are happening with a hypercoagulable state. In addition, it sets up a situation where bacteria can just kind of hang out and have a party. And we call these parties where these bacteria hang out, they're called biofilms. And so people can have bacterial infections or colonizations like in their sinuses or their genitourinary tract, the bladder. And if they also have a hypercoagulable state, the biofilms that are being created by the bacteria are being reinforced by the people's hypercoagulable predispositions. And thus, this makes it that much harder to kill these infections. Then those infections are setting up a source of inflammation, oxidative stress, that's driving the symptoms that patients are dealing with. So in my presentation today, I'll go through a case of a patient who has all of these issues, mast cell, mold, Lyme, et cetera, and she's hypercoagulable. And what turned out to be the kicker for her was that she actually had a long-standing colonization in her bladder. And as we slowly chipped away at the infections that were in her bladder, her symptoms got better and better and better.
I imagine you're in a unique position in the fact that because your clinic is that specialized and you see these like really hard cases one after the other, you're like solving pieces of the puzzle that maybe other practitioners don't get to because, they may not see those people, or that they are able to unwind it in different areas, or they just get stuck because this is like an extremely complex case that they can't unwind.
I think, unfortunately, it's that they haven't seen it enough. These people are walking into your practice. The rates of MCAS have increased. We used to think it was 17%. Now it's probably 25% of the patients. I would say a good 75% of patients who go to functional medicine practitioners have some variation of mast cell activation. So if you don't know about mast cell, you absolutely have to learn about mast cell. And the things that drive mast cell are going to be anything that drives inflammation. And so those are infections. And the mast cell and the hypercoagulability piece, mast cells can produce heparin, which would reduce your clotting, but it can also lead to an inflammatory state that will increase your clotting. And so the balance gets disrupted in clotting. And then if you add in that biofilm piece, which I found in so many of my patients.
Yeah.
So what we're finding is that patients who have mold have colonization of bacteria and or fungus. It's not just about Marcons like Shoemaker taught us. There's a whole zoo in there. And oftentimes those same patients have a zoo in their bladder as well.
So let's go a little further into that. What exactly is a biofilm, and what do practitioners need to know about how to deal with them?
So biofilms are a protective mucus polysaccharide matrix that is produced by bacteria. I think about it as where bacteria hang out and live, and they share information, and they have a party there. They share resistance genes, and when they're in that biofilm, they're much more difficult for the body to detect. They're difficult for our conventional methods of detection as well. So most of the time, the bacteria are hiding in that biofilm. When enough of them get released from that biofilm, then you're going to get symptoms. So that's when a person might develop burning pain when they urinate. And that shows us that there's bacteria present. In conventional medicine, we do a urinalysis, we do a urine culture. If it meets a certain threshold, then we say, okay, you have an infection. Now we need to treat you with antibiotics. But the bacteria are still hiding in the biofilm. So you treat the little stragglers that are out of the biofilm, but you've left the source of the infection hiding behind that biofilm. And so we really have to think about what are infections and which ones need to be treated. Now, everywhere that bacteria exists, there is a biofilm. So you can have a healthy biofilm, but if you have pathogenic bacteria hiding behind that biofilm, you're going to continue to have symptoms. So there, fortunately, is a newer technology. Actually, about 50 years ago, PCR came out, and that was where we were able to say, okay, this strand of DNA, does this match in my specimen, right? But we could only find what we looked for. Next generation sequencing enables us to say, okay, let's find all the DNA of all the organisms in a specimen and match it against a library of tens of thousands of organisms. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And we know exactly what's there, right? So many of our mold patients are chock full of stuff, right? And they've got sinus issues, and they've got lots of allergy symptoms, but just giving them cholestyramine or even charcoal and clay and doing your binder protocols is not going to get rid of this. Even doing antifungals is not going to get rid of this if this is all bacteria. So we really need to know what's there. Using next generation sequencing and using biofilm busters, we can identify what's actually in the person's colony and kill it appropriately.
Is this practical for the average functional medicine doctor to do today?
Absolutely, absolutely. The company that I use, MicroGenDX, takes insurance. They take Medicare, right? So these are tests that are widely available to anyone who is interested, and the company is really excited to get this technology into the hands of more and more clinicians.
And you think, I guess, how do you feel like the average doctor who starts their journey in, say, functional medicine education, like what do you see as the journey forward into environmental medicine and what that offers for doctors who want to get outcomes in these kind of cases?
I mean, I think that you have to start where you're at, right? You have to know the basics, but when you add in a technology like next generation sequencing and you add in ideas about biofilms and pathological biofilms, it opens up the possibility that many of the things that are driving inflammation in patients is actually these biofilms, these pathogenic biofilms. And we have a technology to identify the organisms and treat them. So it's been miraculous, honestly. I had one patient, she was a nurse in her 40s. Actually, she was on disability because she was so sick. And, the usual gamut of the patients that I see, mast cell, mold, Lyme, et cetera. And she couldn't really function. She also happened to have interstitial cystitis. What was diagnosed as interstitial cystitis. Pain with urination, right? She had a biofilm bacterial colony in her bladder. I gave her 1 round of antibiotics. She was 80% better. 80% better. Not everybody goes that way, of course, but we found the key that we needed to unlock her inflammatory pathology.
Beautiful.
Right? It was so cool.
Wow. Do you tell me about like the complexity of cases that you've seen and how things have changed in the last few years with adding spike protein into the mix as like a new factor? What do you see on the front lines with that?
I mean, I think that patients are sicker. They're sicker than they were 5 years ago. They're sicker than they were, much, much sicker than they were 10 years ago. They're younger as well. And so, but all the constellation of things that are happening is still the same, right? Yeah. It's the triggers, the mold, the environmental toxins, the spike protein, the infections that are driving the oxidative stress, that drives the inflammation, that drives the dysregulation. And we know as functional medicine practitioners how to take care of that. So even if you're not seeing the most complicated patients, you apply those strategies, you apply that root cause thinking, it's possible to get these people better.
Awesome. Well, I know when we first met years ago and you did the functional forums in Orange County, my judgment is that there you were sort of like a leading clinician that not many people knew about at that moment. But now in the last few years, I think I see your star rising as far as more people knowing that you're a leader in this space, but also, you've stepped into leadership here with the American Academy of Environmental Medicine. Why is this important to you? Why is it important for you to be part of this organization? And what do you think this organization, the reimagination and the resurgence of the American Academy of Environmental Medicine means for the industry?
I think the truth is, part of the reason that people are so sick is because of the tsunami of environmental toxicants that we're bathing in on a regular basis. And conventional medicine doesn't have a clue, right? So patients go to their conventional doc and they get a label. And yes, functional medicine has better answers and better tools, but unless we're addressing the environmental toxicant piece, we're missing the boat. Because that's what's causing this overload. It's a total load that's leading to all these problems that we're seeing downstream, whether it's dementia or autism or cardiovascular disease or chronic fatigue syndrome. The pathology is the same.
Yeah. How cool is it to work with doctors like Dr. Guillory and Dr. Jeffrey Morrison? I mean, to me, those are doctors that are right in it, but also have a strong, clear vision for the future and want to see this grow. I can imagine it's quite exciting to be in this journey with them.
Absolutely. I love working with those guys. They're fantastic, as are all the people on the board and our executive co-directors. And it's an exciting time to be a clinician and to recognize that we have the ability to really help a lot of people with this information.
Well, thank you for taking the lead. If you haven't seen Dr. McCann's session that we had in the previous functional forum, which had slides and details, it was awesome. We'll put a link to it in the show notes. Thanks so much for showing up and being part of it. Look forward to your presentation this afternoon. And I'm grateful for you giving us a little tip of what you're going to be teaching.
Thanks, James.
All right, I'm here with Dr. Vivian Asamoah, GI doctor and first-time attendee. Doc, what do you think of AAEM?
You know, I've really enjoyed the lectures. The lectures there have been some great speakers, some great scientists doing their thing, lots of experience of sometimes, cases that we may find very, very challenging, and we may not have all the tools for in our practices, but knowing that I think the options are and access to some of that, some of those items in our toolbox may become soon available, but they're not readily available to all of us at this time. So it's nice to know that there's progress, but it's also frustrating to know that there's more that we can do, but we haven't gotten there yet.
Are you finding yourself face-to-face with these kind of cases?
Yes. As an integrative gastroenterologist, I do see quite a lot of complicated GI patients. And it's going to be hard for me to say here, but I know we say all diseases begin in the gut, but I think all diseases actually begin in the environment, really, and then end up in the gut. And so, as a functional medicine doc, I think it's always been like, treat the gut, treat the gut, treat the gut. And this conference is really telling me about look around the patient and outside what's going on. Because if you don't address that, that's going to keep hitting the gut and you're still going to run into issues. So I think that's probably the biggest thing I've learned about this conference. Yeah.
That's an awesome takeaway. Doc, it's great to meet you in person.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. All right, I'm here with Dr. Troy Ross from Reno, Nevada. Doc, why did you come to the AAEM?
Well, it is something that I've discovered as a way to expand my horizons past the allopathic boundaries that I was raised in as a professional.
And what's been some of the highlights from this year for you?
Mainly just the interactions I'm having with all of the different clinicians and points of view that people have. It's been a great experience.
Great. And things to take back to Reno to work with your patients?
Oh, yeah, better appreciation for establishing lipids in the cell membranes, and certainly this morning's opportunity to experience Vegas Fest with you. That's something that I have to figure out how we're going to build that into community and to group practices, but I think that's something that's going to be really worthwhile.
Well, Doc, it's great to see you again. I'm glad you're here, and thanks so much for taking it to Reno.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, I'm here with Aubrey. Aubrey, tell us a little bit about why you came and what you've enjoyed.
Yeah, I've been in functional medicine for the last probably 8 or 9 years, and I see a lot of people with mold toxicity, infertility, gut issues. And so I've learned a lot of the foundations for environmental medicine, and I just want to come here and bring more back home for patients and clients.
Any highlights?
I like all of it, I think, essentially. I like the phospholipid therapy. That's one of my favorites because I see the biggest outcomes with that too. I think the biomagnetism was really interesting, especially on chronic pain, but.
Lots of interesting topics. You got to be here next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're here with Dr. Aristo Vojdani, godfather of functional autoimmunity. Doc, tell us a little bit about your lecture today and what you're bringing that's new and fresh to AAEM.
Thank you so much. First of all, I emphasize the importance of environmental triggers in autoimmune diseases. Yes, genes are important, but genes play a minority role in autoimmune diseases. Environmental factors such as food, toxic chemicals, pathogens, gut dysbiosis, stress, we call them exposome factors in general, play a significant role in autoimmune diseases. My talk today mainly was focused on neoantigen formation, meaning how much toxic chemicals and their binding to human tissue contribute to autoimmunity. Let's take example of some chemicals we get exposed to on daily basis. Those chemicals, either through the lungs or GI tract or our food contaminated with chemicals, can get into the blood, and then that chemical can bind to human tissue. Classical example is polyfluorinated substances like in the kitchen, right? We call them forever chemicals. I have read several articles about these chemicals. When they get into the blood, bind to human albumin, which is the highest concentration of protein in our blood. After binding to our albumin, our immune system is going to recognize them as non-self antigen is going to attack that albumin. If they will bind to smooth muscle, they are going to attack the smooth muscle. If they will bind to mitochondria, they are going to attack our mitochondria. So this is really the basis of induction of autoimmunity by environmental or toxic chemicals. So that's really explaining the mechanism. So as a clinician, if you see your patient is having some levels of some levels of antibodies, please take that seriously. Don't say, if you have anti-nuclear antibody of 1 to 80, you can go home and come back next year. No, you should take that seriously, because that shows some foreign material is binding to your tissue that is causing autoimmune reactivity. And so by finding the trigger, you can remove the triggers, and 6 months later, those antibodies will disappear, and you will prevent the full-blown of autoimmune disease in the future.
Amazing. I know you've been at this for decades now. Yes. Do you have more hope that the recognition of these kind of predictive patterns and the prodromal period is going to come upon us soon?
Unfortunately, if a patient goes to a rheumatologist and they find that patient is having borderline elevation of rheumatoid factor, immune complexes, anti-nuclear antibodies, because the patient doesn't have symptomatology, they send that patient home. That's wrong, okay? We should take all those antibodies seriously, and only by recognizing these biomarkers showing the body exposure to foreign materials, we can prevent autoimmune diseases. But again, unfortunately, the rheumatologists and other doctors do not take this seriously. Let me give you another example. The anti-nuclear antibody, which is a good measure of autoimmunity or screening for autoimmunity, it used to be 4% in so-called healthy population. Now you know the percentage is close to 15%.
The new normal.
Yeah, and the new normal. So every time you raise the normal level, that's wrong. We have even that 4%. You and I and the doctors participating, American Academy of Environmental Medicine, functional medicine, they take that seriously, because normal people don't make autoantibodies.
Absolutely.
Okay, they are at the pre-clinical stage of autoimmunity. That's the right way to take that.
Well, Doc, I want to thank you for all of your years of advocacy. I know you're still on this mission, and I'm here in full support.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you for your contribution to the field.
Yes, thank you.
Education is the name of the game.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Rista Vajdani.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to check in with Dr. Nasha Winters for her first time on the Functional Forum. So many people have told me that I need to connect with Nasha, and we do a special long interview that you'd hear on the podcast, but here's some of the best bits for you. Enjoy. Let me ask you this. So your book was called The Metabolic Approach to Cancer. That's what I know you for, right? But I actually saw you last time here at this conference, and now I see you again here. Why do you come to an environmental medicine conference if it's metabolic?
Well, it's funny, first of all, that any doctor would that any doctor questions why we'd ever come to an environmental medicine conference in general is interesting to me.
Yeah.
We all should be coming because we're all impacted. I mean, my teacher, late Dr. Walter Crinion, said that it's no matter of if you have toxicity, it's how bad is it and how does it impact you.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest drivers of endocrine disruption is our food and the environment around us. And what that impacts directly and specifically is the mitochondria. And what that turns into is a metabolic discourse. And what we now understand cancer to be, and growing in the understanding of that, is cancer is a metabolic mitochondrial disease. And so if we're not looking at the triggers to where it suddenly goes rogue in our system, we're missing out. And so if you're not taking out the garbage with your patients dealing with a cancer diagnosis, you won't change their metabolic mitochondrial health.
Yeah.
And so having them understand what they're, so think about it this way. Your mitochondria, we all were taught in 6th grade biology, it was just about making ATP.
Yep.
It's like the teeniest tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
What we now understand our mitochondria to be are these amazing receivers. They're taking in information of every single thing we're putting in, on, and around us, willingly or unwillingly, knowingly or unknowingly, from everything from our soil, our air, our water, our body care products, our food sources, our thoughts, the people we're around.
Yeah.
Go into the mitochondria. They translate that information, and then they send out signaling agents.
Can I ask you this?
Yeah.
We did a whole thing on the mitochondria a couple of years ago with Andy Heyman, and he said a couple things, and I want to run them by you to see whether you agree.
Cool.
He said, we've always been told that the nucleus is the brain of the cell, and he said it's not the nucleus is the library, the mitochondria is the brain.
Oh, I just got chills.
Do you like that?
I love that.
I thought you'd like that.
Oh my gosh.
And he
So
also
good.
feels that the energetic connection between mitochondria and different cells is the vital force.
I got chills again. I mean, we've called it chi, we've called it prana, we've called it, energy.
When we said that in the functional forum, a bunch of naturopathic doctors on a thing were like, that's definitely not that, you don't know. And I was like, well, I don't know. Tell me when you got a better answer.
Well, exactly. Well, when you think about it, let's just a moment. You guys have done, you can go back and listen to the mitochondria talk, but think about it, 170,000 years ago, there were these bacteria that basically we became part of us. Our mitochondria make up upwards of 20% of our body mass. Our mitochondria evolved from bacteria. We have been pouring antibiotics on our soil for at least since World War II, which were all lovely leftover remnants from the wars, where we're like, all this leftover ammo, let's turn it into big pharma or big ag. Right? Yeah. Which is where part of the transformation of this year is changing. And so we immediately started poisoning in a way that we've never poisoned these guys that have evolved with us for 170,000 years. Then number 2, our mitochondria are our inner light source. So when I think about life force, vital force as a naturopathic doctor, I do think about the mitochondria because the complexes in the mitochondria are what interface with light. They're like our photovoltaic cells, like photovoltaic system. Yeah. So the exposure, another environmental toxin, blue light in the wrong times and places, right? And screen time and EMFs. These are things that impact directly in the chain of our energy production cells. Yeah. Which is just wild. Like, there it is again. The signaling pathways that come out of those mitochondria, those signaling pathways are jammed up with misinformation from all kinds of chemical invaders and toxic invasions, which is pretty wild to me.
Yeah.
And then when you think about it at the end of the day, like every clinician will tell you that the number one common symptom when a patient comes into their office is fatigue. Mm-hmm. And fatigue is the first sign of mitochondrial destruction. And we can't take out the garbage, apoptosis, so programmed cell death, which is when cells are damaged or not optimal. our mitochondria are in charge of apoptosis to take out the garbage. So think about it on those levels. So why would anyone not be in an environmental conference? We're here because our mitochondria are demanding us to be here.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good way of thinking about it. I wanted to ask you about cancer because I guess, what would you think of the idea that part of the reason why we don't understand cancer is that we use the same word for a range of different diseases?
Oh man, I love it. And what is his name? The man who runs the New York, he's known as the billionaire doctor. He came up with a Braxane, Dr. Shunshang. Am I saying that correctly? He's also owns the LA Times.
Yeah.
So he did, I remember in 2014, probably October, November 2014, I started getting calls from all kinds of patients and emails and texts of them saying, I just saw this guy on 60 Minutes and I swear to God, he sounds just like you. And when I went and watched it, it's because he said we should stop it with calling it cancer or calling it breast cancer or pancreatic cancer. We should look at it as a disruption in the system, the ecosystem.
Wow.
That we should stop classifying it as a single disease when it's a collection of diseases or patterns that are going to manifest uniquely in each and every one of us. So even 10 women with the same breast cancer diagnosis and even similar demographic, they're going to have very different expressions and reasons for why they're expressing. He questioned that back then. They all thought he was nuts, but he's still talking about that. Right. And I think that if we took that away, it would change, because you even just say the word cancer and people just go into shock and trauma.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that, because I feel like it's actually kind of emerging at this moment that all major chronic illnesses are actually like that. So if you look at Alzheimer's and cognitive decline, it's like, well, by grouping them in the way that we've grouped them, we've decided that it's this. But if you look at the sophisticated ways that this is being reversed, it's, in some people, yes, it is largely metabolic. In some people, it's largely toxic. In some people, it's largely biotoxin. And you need to be able to separate those things out. And ultimately, I feel like we're on a parallel path to go and work all that out. Let's talk about the transformation that you are facilitating, because the easiest place to start, which you've done, is to educate patients and educate doctors and so forth. The harder thing, I think, is then to think about how do we really solve the problem at the scale that it exists.
Right.
And I think that one of the reasons why friends of mine have always been trying to put us in a room together is because I think we think in those terms, and I know that you do. The hospital is obviously on that path, but I know you have some exciting stuff coming up, and I'd love to help our practitioners know about it, so that if they're, there is some resistance, I think, in the functional medicine community to treat cancer.
I know.
I think there's not a lot of cancer stuff at conferences, and I think part of the reason is that with most other complex chronic illness, there's a predictable pattern by which it occurs and then goes back. Right. So if you do too much of one thing or not enough of another, you'll get this disease. And if you do the opposite, it'll sort of come back in the other direction. Autoimmune disease, metabolic, all those kind of things. But with cancer, there's just sort of this level of unpredictability, right? And I think that scares people. And also the fact that I think in the early days, and maybe still now, it was an easy way to lose your license.
Exactly.
Right. So tell us a little bit about what is the transformation, and how do you see that we can actually solve this problem at the level that it exists with your vision?
I love it. Well, first of all, I really appreciate you talked about kind of the major conditions that affect us today. So cardiovascular, neurological, diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular, mental illness, cancer, to me, they're all the same disease. They're all mitochondrial at their source of where things go wrong, because the information being taken in, translated, and signaled out. It might signal out and manifest as Parkinson's or mental, bipolar or diabetes because of that. And so if you come back and you clean up the environment of the ecosystem of us in relation to the environment of the ecosystem outside of us, you can have a pretty big impact on any of these chronic illnesses we just listed off. And there might be some nuances, of course, with any one of those diseases. What I want people to understand is, and what we tend to do in the functional medicine and the naturopathic medicine, and really conventional medicine too, is we default immediately. I like how one of our colleagues spoke this morning about, we default to treatment right away. And that's what I always say, is we jump right into protocol. And we do that without understanding the why. We do that, we need to gather data. And so functional medicine, I think, does a really good job of gathering data, but sometimes they don't know exactly how to translate it and then apply it, make it actionable. So what I've done is trained a methodology so that it still maintains people's autonomy, still maintains their level of expertise and interest and their own curiosity, especially if they're a seasoned practitioner or someone who's been kind of scared of the big C. And suddenly they realize, well, if I just follow this methodology, I can apply this to cancer, but I can apply this to neurological, I can apply this to mental health, I can apply this to cardiovascular. And they start to realize it's sort of a sure path forward, which is different because we don't have a common language. And I think when you're drawn to doing alternative integrative functional medicine, you're already kind of a little bit of a rebel, and you kind of already want to do your own thing. So I like that there's more of this methodology, like a framework that still says, you be you, but let's follow a consistent methodology that gets us the results, whatever tools we choose to use. As long as we're choosing them based on the information we have.
So you set out the methodology, people can choose their own adventure within it, but ultimately the adventure. I like that. And
that
I feel
helps.
like that's, I mean, you know, in this sort of parallel universe that we're both participating in brain health, it's like we've got doctors using Trumura who, you know, are mental health, wanting to do cognitive decline and just looking at like complex chronic illness. And ultimately, they're choosing their own adventure in there. If you want to reverse cognitive decline, that's it. But ultimately, you know, people use it in different ways. Ultimately, you have to do a few things the same. You have to empower the patient to participate. You have to understand what's driving the dysfunction. You have to make sure this person's not going to die. You know, and there's, you know, that I think that there's some commonality in the way that we see what needs to happen for this to really shift.
And then collecting that data in a meaningful way. Because sometimes there is just so much. And our conventional medical system, as you well know and speak to, is very much like you look for the single target and you find the single treatment. And that just is going to fail us over and over again because we're complex humans with complex experiences, with complex interactions. And so a methodology allows for some of that complexity to take root. And then the meaningful way of collecting the data and looking at the data, that translation starts to allow for more the N of one model to really be birthed, which is where I think part of the transformation is. I think you and I are both on that page of you need this communal model to help it. So we train both, you know, we empower the patient because an empowered patient's a hard to kill patient. We then empower an advocate, which might be an allied health professional or someone who themselves has come through a journey themselves, who have a lot of wisdom in what they've learned. And then we empower the clinician. And then we empower a relational aspect there. Because it's also, you know this in your communal teaching, like in our litigious society, people don't want to harm their tribe. You know, they want to trust and lean in. So when you're working in that communal model as well, there's more trust and more ease. Like you saying, a lot of doctors are afraid to work with cancer, but when suddenly they have 800 others from around the globe who are supporting people on the cancer journey, they feel a little more confident and they feel like they've got resources to lean into and that they don't have to go it alone and that they're not going to be completely attacked on their own. They've got other people to resource with. That's huge, huge in that arena.
So tell us what's happening April 1st.
So April 1st, we are launching our first iteration of our data platform, which is MT Omics, which is very much specific to the oncology community. Where it will go in the future, we don't know, but that's where it's starting. It's basically a tool, a clinical decision-making tool for clinicians that is also a data repository of a lot of when they tell you there's no data. For the love of God, there's so much data. So we're bringing it all together and then translating it and using things like AI to help people understand certain patterns, pattern recognition, but also what treatments seem to be best fit with certain patterns. Like, for instance, off-label drugs are a hot topic in oncology today, and everyone and their dog is going it alone and reading books and then ordering things online and applying it to themselves with no methodology. Some do okay, more don't. And it's like, well, if we can actually get their data, we can now know what's going to work, why, what dose, duration, and combination. We're going to know how it interacts with their pharmacogenomics. We're going to know what is the best timing of this, like when should it be brought on board? Does it need to be brought on board? Have they run the course of whatever therapy they're on and need to change direction? It's going to be an incredible tool to help give the confidence, but also to scale this approach, because there's a lot of data we have to go through with patients in this model to give them the right outcomes. And doctors don't have that kind of time. So to have an environment and a tool that is doing it automatically for them and scaling it is pretty exciting. And then there's the front-facing part that the patient can engage with it in almost like a gamified way, and that similar thing to be like you, like showing which pillars are your strengths right now, what are your priorities, what are your weaknesses. Then there's also the place of the tendency of some people want to do everything all at once. Some people are petrified to even take one step. This will give them some, some ability to prioritize and choose, like you said, kind of choose their own adventure.
All right, I'm here at AAEM with Dr. Christine Burke. Dr. Burke, you've got your True Neuro booth now here. How does it feel to, after all this work, to actually be showing practitioners this, and what's the feedback like?
It feels amazing, and mostly it feels amazing because everybody that I'm talking to relates so much to the pain of trying to organize all the data that we try to track, to how complicated it can be to remember what we've done, where we've been, the clinical decisions that we've made, and just having this platform organize all of that to make it easier for us to be efficient at our work. People are really giving me positive feedback.
You're sitting in all the lectures, I'm in and out. This is complex stuff.
Yeah, it is complex stuff. There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, a lot of things that interact with other things, and just a tremendous number of biomarkers that we can and should be following in order to help our patients get the best outcomes. And that's what makes it complex.
Yeah. Now that you've reversed cognitive decline consistently, is it possible to reverse cognitive decline without taking the environmental lens?
No, in my opinion, no, I don't think that we can. I think there's probably a small subset of people that can have tremendous improvement without addressing the environmental piece because that piece is small for them, or maybe they've already done work in that space. But overall, what we see in our practice, in the research study, is that the environmental piece plays a huge role, whether it's microplastics or it's chemicals and pesticides. We had that lecture on neurodegeneration and environmental chemicals this morning. Or it's mold and mycotoxins. It is a huge piece of the brain health puzzle.
So in the True Neuro platform, what's happening on the environmental side?
So in the True Neuro platform, we have the environmental piece on both sides. So on the patient side, in the brain health pillars, we have the remove pillar, which is about removing environmental chemicals and removing infections from the body. And then on the practitioner side, we have both chemical toxins and the biome and biotoxin section, with both have to deal with environmental inputs.
Okay. Well, what's happening here at AAEM is that doctors are learning, but finally, for the first time, it feels like there's a scalability to this movement, and it's really down to your amazing work. And follow this thread. We're going to have much more about True Neuro coming up very soon. All right, I'm here at AAEM with Jana, nurse practitioner extraordinaire. Tell me why you came to AAEM and what's been inspiring for you.
Well, I came for the conference because I practice pediatric functional medicine, and it's been a while since I've been to this conference, and I wanted to learn some new tools for my patients. And we just learned about magnets, biomagnetism, which was very new for me and inspired me to learn more about it to treat my patients.
Yeah.
So that was really cool, and just getting reminded of some tools that maybe you forget about over the years.
You guys are on the front lines of recovering kids with, chronic neurodegenerative neuro issues. What's it like to be in this energy with this conference?
It's amazing. Last night with Dell Bigtree it gave me chills. I had chills the whole speech because my population is autism and pandas, and recovering those kids can be such a journey for the parents and for the practitioner. And so just getting that inspiration from him was remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, you and Emily are doing, such great work there, but obviously there's a lot more kids that don't get access or haven't had access up until now. Have you found some tools here that you think could help?
I do. I think just getting inspired again. Sometimes you get in a rut and you're using the same things over and over again, and being reminded of certain case studies, being reminded of certain supplements, or even, energetic medicine. You go back with this restored energy of wanting to help people and use new tools again.
Well, I'm glad you're here. Thanks for all the great work.
Thank you so much.
So there's some pretty cool things happening here at AAEM to engage the people. You'll see there was casino night Friday night, Vegas Fest hosted by yours truly. We've got Erin Brockovich keynoting tomorrow, and she's got her book there. And then Intoxicated is the movie by my good friend Derek Guillory. Let's go and check out an interview with him right now. All right, I am here with Dr. Derek Guillory. 10 years of friendship, I would say. 2015 IFM. Yeah, look, Dr. Derek Guillory, board member here at AAEM, and has an amazing practice. And I think the thing that I can share with the audience at home, I get a lot of people every week asking me like, hey, which doctor shall I see? And I ask a few questions to see, is this something that could be handled by someone that I know that's in your state? And if I get the full rundown that this is like the sickest person of all time and they've seen everyone, then I say, send them to Derek, because one, I know that you have people come in and stay and see you, but you also have like an amazing set of tools that you use in your office, and you're used to working with like really complex, really sick people. So, and I always get good reviews. So yeah, rootcauses.com, that's your clinic. Tell us a little bit about what you have going on there. What are some of the tools that you're using that you found to be most effective, and the sort of basis of root causes?
So thank you for that. That was really nice. 10 years, man. Austin, Texas. Yeah. So at Root Causes, I have a really broad practice, and I see patients from 6 months old to 93-year-old patients is my oldest patient. We see autism and Parkinson's and cancer and thyroid disease and abdominal issues. And so my mission is to be an instrument of healing for people and for the world by dealing with the underlying causes of disease. And so everybody gets to see a nutritionist. They're dealing with nutrition. Everybody is dealing with detoxification, because that is the cure. Nourish, detox is the prevention, and that's the cure. And then I have a lot of targeted therapies that make people better more quickly. So the exciting thing at Root Causes is now the next phase, which is building community. So that's where we connected many years ago on building community, because we have to get people in this community doing the same things, making good choices together, because my health is inextricably tied to yours. And we're all in this together. And so my companion foundation site is rootcauses.org. I made a movie with Bobby Kennedy and Dell Bigtree, and we are using that film to help doctors get their patients in community, to understand the nature of the problem. Environmental illness is harming all of us, even the babies that have not yet been born. So, you are an egg in your grandmother's belly.
Yeah.
And so future children have got to be dealing with environmental exposures, with the burden of all of these hundreds of thousands of chemicals. And so that's the big push for Root Causes right now, is the community movement. Getting people in community is my biggest focus right now.
So this weekend, you're showing the film for the first time, and I've had a preview of it. I mean, I guess what are your hopes that, what are things that people will learn if they watch that film that maybe you feel like is not known in the general public?
So two things. The problem is way worse than anybody realizes, but the hope is very real, and I am not depressed. I'm not disappointed, because we can do this together.
Yeah.
The message in the film is you cannot get away from the environmental exposures.
Yeah.
And we are the solution, because when we make choices to buy clean food, to only buy clean food, to drink clean water, to breathe clean air together, that's the solution to the problem. And of course, I'm really excited about Bobby Kennedy, because changing laws and changing the nature of the conversation, just being honest about the situation, has a huge impact.
Yeah, well, it's auspicious that here we are the day after he gets, added in as, head of Secretary of Health and Human Services. What do you think? What's your expectation of the impact, and what do you think? Necessary step on this journey, right?
It is. huge. The fact that he has just been confirmed as health secretary is probably, people don't realize this. This is the biggest thing to happen in government since ever.
Yeah.
Because this changes the nature of the conversation.
Yeah.
When we can maybe control a little bit of the narrative and say, look, let's just ask really good questions. Why are these children sick? Why is everyone so sick in America? Worse than most other countries. And it is the burden of environmental exposures plus the nature of our terribly deficient food.
Yeah.
When you put those things together, you create havoc in our bodies. And so his confirmation is the biggest thing to happen in government. I'm super excited. I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, I'm feeling it with you. And I know we've been in agreement about this for a long time, and you didn't really know how it was going to work out. We knew it was going to work out somehow, because this needs to happen. And ultimately, if you're in the trenches like you and you understand the nature of complex chronic illness, you understand that there has to be some big shift there. And this is the beginning of that. You know, we met at IFM. IFM's provided you, I think, the first doctor in Texas to become IFM certified or something like that.
Yeah, one of the first.
Now you're on the board of AAEM. What does this organization provide to doctors, and why are you excited about being part of it, leading it?
So we are on the very leading edge of a huge tsunami of understanding about the nature of environmental illness. And so we're revamping all of our training programs to help doctors, providers, nutritionists, coaches, people without certifications to learn about what do we do about these environmental exposures that we can't run away from.
Yeah.
And so AAEM is going to be a big part of educating medical providers and the public. And we will be consulting with every political contact that I have, every legislature, and of course, utilizing our contacts to change laws. Because that's an essential piece. We are the solution. Like, all of us are the solution making choices, but we got to get the legislative branch in there together to help us. So,
awesome. Well, thank you so much for leading this. It's been great. You know, I think this is the first 10 years of the journey. There's another, however many years it takes to solve this problem. And I'm really grateful for you, brotherhood and agreement. And I'm pretty grateful for you too. Thanks so much for tuning in. Check out the next segment. All right, we are here with Dell Bigtree, just below the house down here at AAEM. Doc, you mentioned the functional medicine doctor community. What can the functional medicine doctor community bring to MAHA?
Well, I mean, look, I think that MAHA, when people keep asking me what is MAHA, which is, Make America Healthy Again, Robert Kennedy Jr., President Trump coming together. If we're going to make America healthy again, we actually have to build an ecosystem for health. We do not have a healthcare system, as you well know. We have a sick care system. So with the attention on MAHA, I think this is the biggest movement in health that we've ever seen, certainly in this country, with all eyes on MAHA. Mr. Kennedy's asked me, go out and build that infrastructure, get people to be healthier. And I think that one of the first things we need to do is build a database, which I just talked about today, for all the functional medicine doctors, because we don't know how to find them. It's one thing to say to people, your doctor's poisoning you with all those drugs and the surgeries and everything they're burying you in, but how do we find them? I know there's like little silos of things, but while we have the attention of MAHA, I really want to take this opportunity to make it a megaphone for all of these great practitioners out there. And I just define it as anyone that makes lifestyle change or something other than a drug your first option. I'm not we're not against drugs.
Yeah.
They have their moments. I've had a surgery. You need those moments. But how do we create health prior to getting to the point where you're so sick, you need a drug or you need a surgery? How do we make people healthy? And I think that is critical right now. And I think functional medicine's been there, but now they're going to become the heroes of this country.
Absolutely. We've known each other a long time, and the last time we saw each other, there was some question as to, one, whether Trump would win, two, whether he would keep his word.
Yeah.
It's the day after Bobby becomes head of Health and Human Services. How are you feeling?
Oh my God. I mean, it was a miracle. I mean, we just all witnessed a miracle. When I watched, all of the Democrats, as they were just railing on Bobby over the last 2 weeks in the hearings, saying, you're going to change science and medicine. We'll never be able to go back. And I was thinking, amen. Amen. And, to just see this moment happen. I mean, and let me be clear. When, we were running Bobby. I was his director of communications running for president of the United States. When I was there and I got to stand in the Oval Office as he swore in, which was an incredible honor, but I just honestly thought, even if he'd won president, I don't think it was been as big a deal because he was only doing that to try and be able to get to the health. And if he was president, he'd maybe be there for his foreign policy ideas and all the other things that he knew. But what is so amazing about this moment is not just the mandate for Trump, but the mandate on us from God above.
Amen.
Is that this guy, who has one of the most controversial characters for saying what every functional medicine doctor has been saying privately, but saying it publicly, being ridiculed by every newspaper. All of the media was against him. The entire Democratic Party was against him. The entire World Economic Forum and the globalists that have been trying to destroy our sovereignty were against him. When he put his hand on that Bible, only a miracle makes that happen. It is a truly spectacular moment, and I just feel blessed to have just been watching that miracle happen and unfold before my eyes.
One more question. I just want to ask you what you think the importance of the role of community is in MAHA.
Look, one of the biggest things in health, when we talk about, obviously we have an obesity epidemic, diabetes. One of the main things we're talking about is the fact that there's such a spiritual and emotional component to that. You can't just get someone to go on a diet. Usually the reason they're having issues because they have emotional things that they're dealing with. They don't have a community. They don't have love. They don't have people. Community is everything. Community is everything. And I think what we saw in COVID, so many people just felt all alone. My friends were turning on me. Now I want to build that community of those of us that think alike. And what's so exciting about MAHA is now a voting body. We have found each other through Robert Kennedy Jr. and this journey. Now tens of millions of people, maybe 100 million people are ready to be a part of this community. But it's going to take all of us reaching out and being bold, being loud, being proud so that they can find us. So they can find the heart of this community, and that's what that's all about.
Well, it's a message for the functional medicine community. I know not all of you were on board with this plan, but surely now at this moment you can be on board with this because it is our time to stand up.
Go to MAHA.io and sign up there. That's where we're going to start building this directory so that all of the patients in the world that want to get out of a drug-pushing medical practice and go to someone that actually has other ideas, I want them to be able to find you, MAHA.io.
Awesome, Dell.
Right.
Thanks so much, brother.
Sweet.
Thanks so much for joining us for the American Academy of Environmental Medicine and this functional forum. We're super grateful to be here. Hopefully we captured some of the energy that exists at this conference that doesn't exist at any other functional integrated medicine conference. It was really great to be here. I hope that more of you who are aligned with this message will consider joining the American Academy of Environmental Medicine. Next month, we are going to be coming live from one of the hubs of functional medicine, St. Louis, Missouri, April 3rd. We'll see you there.